that camera of yours on, but we are recording right now. And with that, welcome, welcome, welcome on behalf of DIIT. My name is Laura Ogando, and I serve as the program manager for the Office of Digital Literacy and Inclusion. I'm so excited to be here with you today, folks. We have another wonderful topic. And again, so timely because we know that, it's basically mid-May, right? And end of June is going to be here in like the blink of an eye, right? And we know that that means preparing our families for resources that they need over the summer. It also means kind of like figuring out what to do with devices. So today's session is going to cover both of those, and I'm so, so happy. But I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's here to say a couple of words.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm really excited about this session today because this is the question, these are two questions that are just constantly asked of us. So I'm excited to actually have this recording as a resource to share when we get the questions of what should our students do over the summer, and what do we do with the devices, and how can we use the devices with students over the summer, all the good stuff. So thank you so much for joining us, and for the Michaels presenting and the rest, really appreciate it. And over to Christina, if she's here.
Thanks, Lisa. I know I just came off of meeting. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday the 13th. Happy to be here. So looking forward to today. Y'all know me, Christina Bach's EdTech program. Excited for today's session. And we're almost there to the end of June. I can't believe it. Throwing it back to Laura.
Thank you. Thank you. And Latifa, I believe, will be here. She always supports us in the back end, with our attendance and all of the logistical things. So we always like to shout her out because we cannot do this work without the folks who are quietly on the back end. So many of our teams, I'm sure at the school level as well, you have folks that, maybe they're not super vocal, they're not, front and center, but without them, everything falls apart. So thank you, Latifa, for always holding us together and doing a fabulous job. All right, so with that, I'm going to kick it over to Derry to say a few words on behalf of Faith.
Hi, everyone, and happy Friday. Happy Face Friday. This is the place to be, even on Friday the 13th. That's right. Today, as Laura and Lisa and Christina mentioned, we are excited about this Friday because it's all about digital library services. And I can't wait for you guys to learn about all the things that you guys can do using library services and all the free resources that is available to promote learning over the summer. Also, please take note that we have our wonderful also colleagues here from DIIT who's going to share about devices. There's so many questions, whether students should keep the device or bring it back. So all the questions will be answered today. So again, please take this day to learn and then go back to your school community and turnkey that information. Let's have a wonderful summer, bridging resources, and make our students are ready for the fall. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Laura for other announcements. Thank you guys and have a wonderful, wonderful Friday.
Thank you, Derry. So I'm going to pass it over to a couple of our colleagues from DIIT. I want to give them a brief introduction. We have Michael Edwards from IET, that stands for the Instructional Enterprise Technology Team. And I also have Felix Wagner representing our BTDs who support technology all around the city, particularly around the actual hardware support. So those two gentlemen are here. They are fabulous members of our DIIT community, and they can speak to what is required of schools and centrally managed devices over the summer. So let me stop speaking because they're the pros. Thank you so much for being here today.
Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody on a great Friday the 13th. We're here to talk a little bit about what's the requirements for your schools as far as devices went over the summer. And it's a real simple process. If you have a DOE issued device, meaning an LTE device, Chromebook, or iPad, those stay with the students from school to school and over the summer. If you have a school issued device, meaning a device that was issued from your school, purchased with school funding, those are returned to your school. So as long as they fit into those two categories, that's how this is going to work. So if it's a school purchased device, it comes back to the school. If it's a DOE managed or a DOE issued device purchased by the DOE, like a Chromebook or an iPad, those usually will go home with the students and will go to the following school with the students for the next year. That's the easy way. Hopefully that's pretty clear. If there are any questions, this is a great time to ask that. As far as whether those school devices that you've purchased from your school will go home, that's something your school itself will decide. But any device that has been managed by us, any device that's been given out from the DOE, those include iPads and the Chromebooks, will automatically be going with your students and being taken home over the summer.
Michael?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kathy. I'm at PS 30 on Staten Island. How
Yes.
would one know if a parent requested a device and something was sent home? How would they know if it was school issued or, IT issued?
Well, the school itself should know, but if it was issued to them, if it was mailed to them, it was probably done by the DOE. You would know if you issued out a device, and most of the time, if it's an LTE device, it's going to be issued by us because schools can't purchase LTE devices. So if you've issued a student an LTE device, I would say 99.9% of the time that's going to be done from us. So that should stay with the student and be sent home. You as a school should know what those devices are and should be able to look them up either within the RLD or whatever other system you use to look up your devices. So you should be able to figure that out.
Okay,
As far as
thank you.
LTE device, someone has a question about what's an LTE device. LTE device means that they have the ability to, just like your phone, get internet access without having to worry about Wi-Fi. It's an additional way for your computer or your device to be online. The LTE device is similar to your phone and how you do that. So you have a carrier of some kind, and the Wi-Fi would be the Wi-Fi either for your school or for your home.
Thank you.
Yes, cellular data connection.
Getting the sense, because I'm also seeing the chat and I've had a couple of direct messages. I know Felix is here. Felix, didn't you say you had a step-by-step process? So in case folks are like, wait, I'm not sure, because that was a great question, Kathy, about like, how do I know? And like, what exactly? So Felix, do you maybe want to like just walk us through kind of a very detailed process so that there's no mistake? Because I get it, this is tricky, right? And sometimes we just don't know.
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in great.
Great. So yeah, let me share my screen. I came up with a couple of slides that of some things that I'd like to highlight. Let's see. Is it working?
Yep.
Okay, great. So again, good morning, everybody. My name is Felix Wagner. I'm the BTN for Manhattan. And I just wanted to go over, there were a couple of things I wanted to highlight about the central devices and actual devices in general. So for centrally loaned devices, which Mike already mentioned, these devices should stay with students until they leave the DOE. Now that can be either because they graduated right from 12th grade, they're no longer in the DOE, or they aged out of programs, thus also leaving the DOE, or being discharged. Let's say they're going to a private school or they're leaving the country. Right. So
What about homeschool?
Homeschool is still DOE, I believe, right?
Okay.
Right. So
Yes, they are.
Okay.
yeah. So they have to leave the DOE as a whole.
Okay.
The other important thing I want to mention is that all centrally loaned devices must be tracked in the remote learning device report, which is the RLD, which Mike also mentioned, by the school. Some of you might not know what the RLD is, so here is a glimpse of it. It's basically a website where you can track the devices. You can track centrally loaned devices and also school devices. A few of the things that it does is that you can assign a new device to a student. You can recall a device. You can see how many devices have been delivered and assigned. Up here, you can see it. You can reassign a device to another student, right? So you can, which basically means you would recall it. Let's say a student brings back the device to your school. and you want to assign it to another student, you would recall that device using either this button here that says recall device, or here for the individual student. That's why I included this one record. And then you can reassign it to another student. This will also let you see which students in your school have a device and which ones don't, assuming that ROD is being used to track the devices. And it also reports devices that are lost, stolen, or broken. What it doesn't do, it doesn't distribute devices. So you can't come to this website and because you pulled an asset tag from the system and assign it to a student, it does not mean that that iPad is going to get shipped to that student, or it's going to get shipped to your school. So it doesn't distribute devices, it doesn't send notifications, it doesn't change delivery times, and it doesn't support technical management. So for instance, you can't lock devices from here. This is basically just for inventory. In terms of returning devices, for centrally loaned devices, at the end of the school year now, in June, the only students that should be returning devices would be seniors graduating in June, those that are aging out of programs, or those that are being discharged from the DOE, right? If they go into summer school, guess what? It's the same, pretty much the same rule, right? They keep the device until the end of summer school. Once they go into the discharge process for summer school, then they return the device. And I'm sorry, I keep looking over here to the side. It's because I got 3 screens, sorry. And again, very important note, these devices, once they're returned to the school, they have to be recalled. You have to use the recalled feature in RLD, which is the remote learning device report, to recall these devices. If not, what will happen is that because those students have graduated and have been discharged, the system will detect that has happened. And when you try to assign that device to another student, it'll get locked automatically. Because you didn't recall it in RLD, it will assume that that student still has a device. So you have to make sure that your RLD system is up to date as much as possible to avoid that. For school devices, they need to be returned at the end of the school year. That's pretty much the. Do you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
I think that was someone that didn't mute their mic.
Oh.
Which is a good reminder to everyone here. If your mic's not muted, go ahead and mute it while we get through the last little bit of this returning devices section.
Right. So if a student needs a device for summer school, the suggestion would be to either provide a centrally loaned device that you already have in your inventory, so that they can use it and keep it, or to request a centrally loaned device for them.
Awesome.
And that's pretty much it.
There are some questions, because I thank you so much, Michael Edwards, for being in the chat and answering a lot of these questions. But one that I see that's coming up that maybe be a little bit more complicated. What about, you've recalled the device, but it's the parent who's not returning it, the child who's not returning. They've already left, they've moved, you've done everything you need to do on your end, but you still don't have the device. Is there a process for that?
Very important. You never recall a device unless you have it in your hands.
Oh.
Okay. I should have made a slide just for that. Devices you have to have it in your hand in the school in order to recall it. Because you're basically saying, I'm looking at this device and I'm pulling it back to my inventory so that I can assign it to another student. If a student brings a device from another school, right, like it was assigned to them in another school and they came to your school with that device, you can recall it from the other school and add it to your inventory, because now that student has arrived at your school with that device. But if a student says that they lost the device, right, and or it got stolen, you don't do that. You don't fix that using the recall function. A ticket has to be put in, a police report has to be generated, or either the parent, I guess if the parent lost the device, they should go to the police, to the police precinct, and get a police report, or the school can also open a police report, and that gets attached to a ticket, and that whole process of trying to find it and all that all that investigative stuff occurs to try and get that device back.
Wonderful. And I think we have one more question because I see Miriam Sosa, you have your hand up. If you want to unmute it.
So actually I have two questions. The first one is, why is it that when we get back, you say a child broke the device, the tech comes and delivers the device, why isn't right away the asset tag current? It still has the old, and sometimes it could even take weeks. So and then what I try to do, but it doesn't always happen because we get very busy, is I try to put it on the comments, and I try to put a sticky on the back, this device belongs to student. There's the old asset tag. But that is a lot of work to do in itself, especially, being a parent coordinator with so many things to do. Why doesn't the device already, once I look on the RLT report, why isn't that device already assigned to the child? Why does it take a while? And I have a couple of issues, to that fact. And I have a couple of devices where now I don't know who it belongs to. Now, we're going to see how else we could do it. The second thing is there any way that we could collaborate maybe with a precinct where the parents, a lot of my parents, their English is not their language. Is there any way that we could get that form, help out? I don't mind, I could help out the parent fill out the form, and like that when they go to the precinct, it's already made, they have it ready with them, and they'll be ready just to go to the precinct. Here you go, this is what's taking place, this is what happened. Is there any way that I could get my hands on that form that the parents, will have to go to the precinct and fill out? Is it possible to have some kind of collaboration with the precinct?
So for this first issue, hold on, let me move you guys here. Okay. So for the first issue, you're actually not the first school that I've heard that from. I have, we have SPOC hours where many SPOCs have mentioned that where many SPOCs have mentioned that they, when they do the device swap, the asset tag doesn't get updated. I would suggest that you escalate that either via a ticket or escalate it to your BTD, so that or the BTD office, so that we can escalate that to the programmers, because that's something that's supposed to happen, I think within like 24 hours, 24 to 48 hours on the back end, once that device is swapped. So if that's not happening quickly, then we need to let them know that that's happening.
But this has been an ongoing issue that we're talking about. This is where we are way beyond. And, with so many things that we have to do, as a parent coordinator, we have to try to log as much information as we can, but we get so swamped, and it would be very helpful if it already comes, assigned. We don't have to wait for a while. Sometimes they don't even get assigned. But we want to escalate this, and I think it goes for all the schools. I understand if it would just happen to one school, but it's going on with all the other schools, because I have many PCs with the same issue too, that this is what's taking place. So I'm not sure if it could be escalated beyond like me, myself, and I, if it could be just put on the table. Look, this is this is the feedback that we're getting from the schools. Before they get assigned, let's make sure that the device is already assigned, that it's showing up on the RLT report with that number, with that asset tag. That's, that would be my wish for the holidays coming up.
No, I understand what I meant to say, or I was trying to say is that the more people mention that this is happening, the more they're going to actually pay attention, that, to actually resolve it. Like I said, I've brought this up, on separate occasions and individual occasions to that team, but that's, but so the second issue that you mentioned, there actually is a website for the NYPD where you can actually request a police report online. So I'm not sure if maybe that would work better for you than, having access to like an actual form from the police department.
Okay,
or paper form.
I'll look it up and then, thank you.
So I just want to say thank you so much to both Felix and to Michael. That was really helpful. I know some folks were trickling in, and if you feel like you got into the conversation a bit late, no worries. We are recording this, so we'll make sure this recording gets posted in our parent coordinator team, because I know this is really important. Felix, I'm hoping we can maybe get a copy of that slide deck, because that was really valuable information about like exactly what to do, kind of like step by step. So thank you to both of you. And thank you, Michael. I've been watching you in the chat, like really on top of all of the questions we're getting. So hopefully we can hang on to both Michael and Felix for just a few more minutes. You can certainly interact with them in the chat, but I do want to make sure we have enough time just to go over our last few reminders before we turn it over to library services and their presentation. So Christina, if you want to briefly tell us about our next and final Tech Talk.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. Yes, on Tuesday, the 31st, 10 to 11 a.m., you know the drill. We are having our final Tuesday Coffee to Your Tech Talk. Please come with your tech questions, anything that is irking you, that we can help you out with DIT. We are always highly attended with our borough technology directors and borough technology managers like Felix, who just did this fabulous presentation. So please do come through. You should have the meeting in your Microsoft Teams calendar, but if you don't, I'll also post the link on our Microsoft Teams, and we'll see you there. We're looking forward to it. Passing it back to Laura.
Thank you so much, Christina. And yeah, it's the final one. We know how helpful they are. Folks like Michael, Felix, and their respective teams are usually there to help us out. And that's why it's usually such an informative session, because I barely know any of the answers, let's face it. So grateful they're there, because they really know what's up. All right, but really quickly, I'm going to launch a poll for us. You know how we do. We got to figure out who is in our Zoom room. So 1 second, you're going to see this poll come up on the screen. And then we like to play this little game. But if this is your first time coming to a Face Friday, drop that in the chat. And we just want to let you know, welcome. You are in for a treat today. Not only do we have just the most amazing session, because who doesn't want to hear about the free and amazing resources that Library Services has to offer, but we also get to hang out with each other and have fun. That's a really big part of what we do. Learning doesn't have to be boring and bland, right? We can have a little fun while we do it. So hopefully we got some first timers in the house. I see Kathy. And it was actually Felix's first time. Felix, hopefully it didn't scare you.
We also have Rosemary, so shout out to Rosemary, first time.
I love it. I love it. We love our first timers. We also love our old timers. Not that you're old, all right? Because I'm an OG too. But again, lots of love to everyone here today. The fact that this has continued to be such a positive community where we support each other and we learn and we grow. I think that's a testament to what we do, right, Derry? Like this is so special.
And you know what, Laura, I'm kind of curious. Do we have anyone who has not missed a Friday? If you did not miss a Friday, put that in the chat. We want to know, right, Laura?
Yeah, like the perfect attendance. Yeah, who's been to every single one? Oh, Linda, that's a good call out. Seasoned vets. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that point of clarification. All right, folks, I'm going to give us about 10 more seconds to wrap up our poll. Here we go. And oh my goodness, did we? Oh, I thought we got 100%. No, we got 84. That's pretty darn good. So welcome to our PCs, to our FSCs, our FLCs, and everyone in between. We love you. We love that you're here and that you are learning and growing with us. We got one more poll. Oh, wait, there we go. Too fast on the fingers. So we want to know, how are you feeling today? You know, it's a little kind of gloomy outside. I know the weather's not quite cooperating. As I said a few times before we officially started, Mercury is in retrograde and it's Friday the 13th. I didn't really know what the Mercury thing was. Apparently it's a thing. I don't know. All I know is that, like, if you encounter any type of havoc, like if like just some stuff pops off today and you're like, what in the world is happening? Just blame it on that. It's not even your fault. Just be like, yep, it's the universe. I don't know. Just, yeah. So all I know is it's been a crazy few days, and something tells me like today is going to be weird. It's Friday the 13th. I'm not typically so superstitious, but just it's all of it happening at once. I don't know. Weird.
Too many superstitious things for it not to be real, right, Laura?
I feel like it. It's like if I see a black cat cross my path, I'm just gonna go home. It's just gonna be like, pack it up, girl. Like, be out. All righty. A couple more seconds. I actually see a lot of folks, even though it's like we're in this weird flux, a lot of you saying you're feeling happy, and that makes me feel happy. It always makes me feel good when we're all here. That's for sure. So let me go on and end this poll. I'll share it with you. It's almost like a 50-50 split between tired and happy. I feel you. I'm right there with you. But let's talk about what's on deck, because as you know, we're basically at the end of the year. So our next and final Friday is June 10th. We'll send out some details, but it's really going to be a chance for us to celebrate and highlight all the amazing things from this year. And then we want to share 2 opportunities with you. We would love for all of you to join us for the Beyond Access Forum. That's happening on Chancellor's Conference Day, June 9th. I know that PCs, you guys are a slightly different title, and so you don't have to, but it is virtual. So if you are so inclined, you can absolutely attend. If you're not working that day and you're like, peace out, I'm not working, still register, because you have access to the recordings. All right. So important for that. And then we have our Tech Summit happening on August 17th. Also going to be an amazing day of learning. Library Services is actually coming to both events. So if you like what you see today, you definitely need to sign up for both Beyond Access and the Tech Summit. But I dropped the links into the chat so that you can register for both of those. And without any further ado, it's time to learn. So I'm going to pass it over to Michael Dodds and his team, who are going to share all about what they can offer for you and your families. And Michael, if you're talking, I can't hear you. I know, I fight with my audio all day. Everyone knows. If you haven't fought with your audio.
Hi, everybody. I'm the Director of Library Services. My name is Melissa Jacobs. I'm sorry my camera's off today. I'm feeling a little under the weather, but I have my team here, Michael Dodds, who's a library coordinator, and Regis Kostelak from Overdrive. And today they're going to introduce you to the Citywide Digital Library on Sora. This is a digital library that we have spent the last 2 years building out and branding, and it's accessible to all New York City students and teachers and staff. If you have a DOE email, if you have DOE email credentials, you can access the library on the collection on the Citywide Digital Library. We have curated collections that are available. We have specialized collections. We have Heritage Month collections. We're constantly adding additional titles, and I'm hoping that you will dive into it, read a book this weekend. I think it's going to be rainy. It's the perfect time to curl up with a good book. And also, you can link the public library to here. So as we go into the spring and summer months, start kicking off summer reading for our kids, make sure that they have a library card to the public library. Make sure that they know how to get into Sora, into the Citywide Digital Library, because then access is what is available to them. Access is equity, and we want to make sure that our kids know how to navigate and know how to get the materials that they are available to them. Also, you'll see a variety of materials in there that are in multiple languages. We have a ton of Spanish, Hindi, Russian, Ukrainian, German, and a multitude of other languages in audiobook as well as in ebook, and read along where you hear the narration as well as the text. So for you all, if you have a DOE email credentials, log in, borrow a book, relax this weekend and enjoy. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael and Regis. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah,
It
we
looks
can.
great, Regis.
Yes.
Can people hear me now?
Sounds good, Michael.
Good. I did want to thank Regis for doing this on super short notice because I thought I asked him and I didn't. So thank you, Regis. And
problem.
thank you, Melissa. And I'm just super excited to be here with this group promoting these resources for summer reading. I do want to I don't know if Melissa said this when she spoke, but Laura, you said that these are free. I do want to emphasize that they're free for students and parents and teachers, but we do expertly curate them and we do pay a lot of money in central for them. So they're not free. It's not whatever we could get ad dollars to pay for. We do pay for it. It's just not going to cost the school extra money. So that I think that's super important for people to know that these are quality and paid for.
Excellent. And I want to thank everyone for letting me join today. I'm very excited to talk to you about the Citywide Digital Library in Sora. As Melissa introduced us, Michael and I are going to be leading the rest of the presentation. Michael Dode's obviously library coordinator for the NYC DOE. My name is Regis Kostelak. I'm an account manager for Overdrive, which is the company that provides Sora. So that said, I'm going to just skip ahead. We can look at a quick agenda, things we're going to talk about today. First, we're just going to describe what the Citywide Digital Library on Sora is, what it provides, how does it work. We're going to go into a quick demo, show you some tools, hopefully give you some hands-on skills that you can then turnkey with parents at your buildings. We'll give you some next steps to get started, some goals leaving this session, and then some Q&A. So again, we will have time set aside at the end for questions. Feel free to come off mute at that time, ask questions, we can answer them in real time. But if you have questions throughout, I'd encourage you to put it in the chat. Michael and I, and I'm sure others will be watching the chat. So if we can get to it throughout the flow of the presentation, we'll be sure to do that. All right, that said, Michael, I'd ask you to maybe give a little bit of background on what the Citywide Digital Library is, sort of how did it get started and where are we now?
I would love to address that. So we build strong library programs throughout the city, providing good reads that address both curricular and reading needs for students. And then we had the pandemic and all of a sudden we couldn't do physical materials in schools anymore because kids weren't in schools and people couldn't be in the same room with each other. So we got a contract together with Overdrive and we started what's called the Citywide Digital Library on Sora. And the idea is to centrally pay for these high quality materials that are age appropriate and get them in students' hands. Because at the beginning of the pandemic, we were struggling to how do we get books in kids' hands so that they don't fall behind in their reading, so that they become engaged readers, that they're not just sitting home staring at screens all day with nothing engaging that will help them grow themselves. And so we got approval, we got the contract, we got the funding, or Melissa got the funding, I should say, credit where credit's due. And we started building it out, and it's only grown and grown, even with, kind of the pandemic starting to kind of be in the rear view, knock on wood, spit through your fingers, all that type of stuff. It's the usage of it is still growing. So this is still one of those places where central makes sense to share the resources among schools. We buy hundreds of copies of the high in demand titles. I forget what the exact, are we at 30,000 titles yet, Regis?
We're just short of 30,000 unique titles, and there's hundreds of thousands of copies of those titles.
Yes, and on top of that, and we'll cover all this, but then you get the tie-ins of the 3 public library systems in the city, and all of a sudden you've got probably the greatest if you want kids to find something to read, you have the greatest availability of books instantly that's probably existed in human history. So you want the Library of Alexandria digitally, we built it. And so we're going to cover how you make those times, how do you connect the 3 accounts from the public libraries, how do you get a public library card digitally in 10 seconds or less, and then tie it into the citywide digital library, and everything is age appropriate. And you've got the best tool for building readers during the school year and over the summer that can possibly exist.
Excellent. That's excellent background and context to get everyone on the same page if you're not familiar. I will add too, we are rapidly approaching 2 million checkouts from the DOE just within this library in such a short time. So by the end of the month, we'll likely hit 2 million checkouts, which is just a testament to how it's been supporting students already and how much usage the students have shown interest in it. You know, a lot of folks will say, my students prefer to read print, and that may be true for some, but for many people, you know, they're looking for digital resources, whether it's ebooks or audiobooks, and that's a testament to that. So I do just like to zoom out for a moment and provide this slide to give everyone a little bit more context. The citywide digital library on Sora is your main collection. We'll talk about logging in just a moment. We've got some instructions, we've got some slides that will teach you to do that, and then you'll see me do that as well when I demo it. But you log in with your NYC credentials, your DOE credentials, so just your email address and password. Same thing for students. You'll be able to just log in. And when you log in, immediately you have access to the citywide digital library. You're connected to all of those resources. You can see though on this slide, those different branching collections. So on the right-hand side there, if your individual school building either has a librarian that has been building a digital library through Sora, you would also have access to that. Maybe your school has purchased curricular materials to have support in digital formats, whether ebook or audiobook, or maybe you've gotten like a PTA grant or some other grant that you've bought your own school titles through. You'd have access to that as well. And then on the left-hand side there, what Michael and Melissa both alluded to is you can actually connect to the public libraries. And I have another slide detailing that. And again, you'll see me do that when we demo. But Michael is absolutely correct. I mean, you've got this colossal collection through the DOE and through library services, and you can connect to the public libraries, which will filter those public library collections based on age appropriate access. So you don't have to worry about a 3rd grade student going into the public library and seeing, you know, 50 Shades of Gray. That's not going to happen. It's going to be filtered based on their grade level to make sure we're only showing them age appropriate materials. With that said, the Queens Public Library, you can access via your DOE credentials. So same thing, you can just log in with your DOE email address. And then any other New York City or New Jersey public libraries, you can access via a library card. And I know we'll put in the chat the link to get those library cards. I think Michael already did. So it's in the chat right there, is how to sign up for those digital library cards almost immediately. So when we're talking about adding the public library, again, we put the link in here, so we'll send the slides out. You'll have access to that if you miss it in the chat, but you can just download the directions. You can get a digital library card. But the cool thing about adding the public library within Sora is, again, like I said, you've got access levels so you're not seeing inappropriate materials, but then you have all the other tools we're going to discuss within Sora. So you can use notes and highlights. You can share with your teacher what you've been doing within the book. And it's just going to give you all that added support. You can then report on that as a student. I can see how much I've been reading in those books. I can track my usage just like I would want to do for independent reading. So again, you'll see this side menu in this image here. You have the option just to add a library right in Sora. And when we demo, you'll see what that looks like in real time. I'll show you how to do that entire process. One thing I really want to emphasize here is the different reading lists, and specifically the diverse reading lists that have been curated within Sora. As Michael mentioned, you know, this is a collection that has really been selected by library services. This is not something where, as the vendor Overdrive, we're just, you know, telling you, here are the books you get. All of these books were selected by content experts, and then they've been curated into these very specific or sometimes broad lists to help students discover what's best for them. So you can see some of the collections on the side there: diverse perspectives, This month is both Jewish American Heritage Month and also Asian American Pacific Islanders Heritage Month. And we've got collections specifically for that. Within these collections, there's almost always content for all grade levels, again, filtered to the grade level of the student. So if I'm again, I'll say third grade student and I go into one of these lists, I'll only see the sort of juvenile materials that are appropriate for me. Whereas if I'm in high school or if I'm a staff member, I'll be able to see everything in the collection. But what these do is, number one, they emphasize diversity, equity, and inclusivity for all students, obviously, but they also make it very easy for you to share these different subject areas or different initiatives with your students, with your parents, because you can simply copy and paste the link to that collection and then send it out in an email, or as I saw Melissa has been doing in the chat, you can drop it in the chat, you can send it in whatever way that you want to. So very easy to share these lists out. And again, a big part of having a collection this large is providing books in which students see themselves and their stories reflected. So that's always going to be, you know, a focus of this collection. I do see some questions in the chat coming up about finding your particular school. I'll show you how to log on in a minute, but if you're trying to log in right now, ignore the school section and just log in through the New York City Department of Education. It should be the big green button at the top. If you're not able to find that right now, don't worry. Within a couple of minutes, you're going to see me do that myself. Great. The next thing I want to talk about here, I always like to carve out some special time to talk about audiobooks and read-alongs specifically. And that's because a lot of times when folks haven't used many digital books, when they hear a digital library, they think of ebooks, and ebooks are fantastic. They've been around for a while now. But one thing that we don't want to miss here is the opportunity to use audiobooks with our students, and read-alongs too, for that matter. All a read-along is basically an ebook that has audio tied into it and will read aloud to the students as they're going through the book. And I'll show you what that looks like when we demo. It's a fantastic tool though, for a number of reasons. Number one, I think we all know we're dealing right now with students who maybe are struggling to read at or above their grade level, right? So we know that the pandemic has really taken a toll on our students' reading comprehension and reading levels. And tying in either a print book or the ebook with an audio component will allow students to hopefully read above that grade level, because they may have a higher comprehension when listening than they do when reading visually. So that's a super important tool right now to give our students access to. It's also going to allow them to hear all of the phonics principles that are so important, right? Model pronunciation, pacing, rhythms, suited for each book. You're able to slow down the narration if you want to hear it a little more slowly and really focus on the phonics of a particular book. And it's going to give you increased access to other languages or dialects. Melissa mentioned early on, we've got lots of foreign language collections, whether it's Spanish or Hindi. We've got a Hindi read-along list. You know, you've got French and German and Russian and Ukrainian and all sorts of stuff, Chinese. You'll see it all in there. But it gives you a great opportunity to not only read in those languages, but hear those languages, oftentimes by native speakers, right, narrating the text. So it's a fantastic tool there. Apart from that, though, you know, there's lots of benefits to audiobooks and read-alongs. I really like to focus on the idea of having a story read aloud. There's so much data and research that shows that students or children that have books read aloud to them at home have far greater levels of comprehension than those that don't. And unfortunately, we can't always control whether or not they have parents or family members reading to them at home. For whatever reason, maybe the parents are working multiple jobs or don't have a schedule that suits that. Maybe they just don't have access to books at home. But the read-along component especially allows students to mimic that experience, to have a book read aloud to them by a professional narrator, oftentimes, you know, doing different voices for different characters and giving them all of those different components that contribute to increased comprehension. So it's an excellent tool for equity and making sure that students have, you know, equitable experiences. And Michael points out in the chat how important that narrator is, right? It's very different from a robotic voice, like a text-to-speech type tool, which is a great tool, but that's very different than having a native narrator reading fluently and emphasizing different parts and providing all of that audio context that is very important. And then one other thing that we're going to touch on in a second too is privacy, offering teens privacy regarding their reading choices. And with that said, I want to just talk about that now, the privacy of digital books. Again, this is not something that folks always think about in relation to ebooks and audiobooks, but it's a really big deal, especially for teenagers. And the idea is to not be afraid seen reading. The fact that when you're reading an ebook or an audiobook, you don't have to worry about being seen with a jacket cover or the spine of the book or people looking over your shoulder and knowing what you're reading. And for whatever reason, that could carry a stigma. So whether it's topics like body image issues, sexuality that you're sort of exploring, home life issues, whether that's drug abuse or something else, mental health issues, you can read whatever book you need to be reading, right? And I don't say want to be reading, because sometimes, especially for teenagers, they need to be reading those books. They need to be exploring those topics in a safe way, in a safe space. Well, you can read those books without worrying about a classmate seeing you, right? Without worrying about someone pointing it out and telling the rest of the class. So it's very, very important. Oftentimes you can talk to if you have a school librarian, talk to your school librarian about whether or not they've experienced students hesitant to check a book out of the library because they don't want to be seen leaving the library with it. So ebooks and audiobooks provide an alternative solution there. And then that last point there, a stigma for a different reason, students reading below grade level, right? You're not going to be ostracized for reading different editions or different titles altogether. And you can think about it, if the whole class is reading a book and maybe your reading comprehension isn't quite there, you're not reading at grade level. Well, you could read the young adult edition, the young readers edition. You could read the graphic novelization. Or you could just have access to an audiobook component, right? You can find these different editions and formats to suit your students. And you don't have to worry about your classmates pointing it out. You're reading on your own device. There is no jacket cover. The back of the book is just the back of your iPad or the back of your Chromebook, right? There's no stigma attached to it. So it's a really, really important factor there. And it's something that you may not see overtly, but your students will know, right? Your students will take advantage of that. All right, and then access anytime, anywhere. And I'm glad we got to talk in the same session as DIIT, and we had that great talk at the beginning about devices and what are students doing with their devices during the summer. The great thing about the citywide digital library on Sora is the way we say it is it's device agnostic. Right? It does not matter what device you have. You can use it on virtually every device, whether that is a Chromebook, whether that is a laptop or a desktop computer. You can use it in the browser. So I'll be using a Google Chrome browser to demonstrate today. You can use it on an iPad or another tablet. You could use it on a phone. It's available as an app or in the browser. So you can use it on any of these devices or all of these devices. Right? I use Sora myself, and I use our public library app Libby as well. And I will oftentimes listen to an audiobook while I'm working on my work computer. And then if I have to commute or if I have to travel, I'll then pull it up on my phone, and my progress is synced between the devices. So if I leave off on chapter 5 on my computer, I pick right back up there on my phone. It syncs automatically. Okay. Furthermore, it's also going to download those books for offline use. So if I check a book out on my phone or on my laptop or my Chromebook while I'm at school and have access to the internet, have access to Wi-Fi, it will automatically download so that I don't need internet access the next time I open it. And this is great, especially if I'm going somewhere that doesn't have reliable internet access, or if I'm traveling. And as we talk about summer, if students are, traveling either for vacation or if they're going to the beach or whatever else, you know that they'll have access wherever they go. They don't need to be connected to the internet. All right, so now let's talk about the nitty gritty. I know a lot of folks have been asking, how do I log in? I saw it in the chat. Number one, there is an app. So if you have DOE iPads, the app should already be loaded onto the iPad. If you're looking to load it onto a personal device like a cell phone or a tablet that you have at home, you can just look for Sora, the Sora app, S-O-R-A, and you'll see this is the experience here. You're going to tap, I have a setup code, type in NYC schools, or it will just geolocate for you and say, oh, you're in New York City. are you part of the New York City Department of Education? You will click on that, and then it will ask you to sign in with your DOE email address and password. And again, a lot of folks are looking for their specific school. It is not tied to your school. It is tied to the NYC DOE. So you're looking for the New York City Department of Education, and you'll log in with that option. There is a small list of schools that's being phased out. Those were schools that early on were using their own Google domains and emails, and those are being phased out. Everyone is now using the DOE email address. So you'll just sign in with that DOE option. So again, you can use that app, or you can use the browser, and you can find Sora in Teach Hub. So you can just go to Teach Hub, go to your apps, you'll find Sora there, and that's how you'll navigate to the CDL. Again, you can just log in through a browser, any browser. I use Google Chrome, whatever works best for you. And you'll see once you click on Sora, it's the exact same experience as the app. So if you're going to show parents or show someone how to use it, it doesn't matter what you use it on. It will look exactly the same. And again, you just sign in with your DOE email address. I have this included here as well. Again, we'll send these slides out, but as far as promoting and making folks aware and making parents aware, this website, discoversora.com/NYC, is a great website to go to that has just some getting started information, some directions, but it also, on the For Educators tab, has these marketing materials, right? Info sheets and FAQs, some step-by-step instructions, printable materials, or you could download as PDFs and mail them out, or email them out rather. Also foreign language materials. So if you have families where English is not their first language, these materials have been translated into the DOE languages. So you can make sure to add support for all of your families. And then social media graphics too. So if you're big on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, TikTok these days, you can download some social media graphics that we've already put there, so you don't have to do any of the hard work. It's already there for you. You can promote as much as you want. Great. So that's all the stuff, the sort of context and the background and everything else. Now let's do the fun stuff. Let's actually show you what this looks like. I'm going to share my other screen now. Again, if you have questions as we're going through, feel free to put them in the chat. Michael, let me know if we want to stop and address any, but otherwise we'll try to answer questions at the end.
Can we just, can you go to Discover Sora and just show them the student tab versus the educator tab? I think that'll help a lot of people.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. So discoversora.com/NYC. This is, you can see at the top here, for students or for educators. So just to make it easy on students, when you come here, you're on the for students page by default. You've got a little intro video here, some steps to get logged in and some tips. But if I go back up on the for educators tab, again, another intro video here. But if I scroll down, these are the resources we're discussing. So these are the info sheets, the marketing materials, foreign language materials, and social media graphics. So this is an open website. You don't need to log in to use any of this. It's there and it's available for you. All right. And now I'm going to go back to Sora. Again, you could navigate to this page through Teach Hub, or you can download the Sora app and you'll see this exact same page. You'll see that it will geolocate to New York City for you. So you'll see this as an option right away. Yes, my school is the New York City Department of Education, or you won't, in which case you can just say, well, I have a setup code, and that setup code is NYC schools. And I think someone's unmuted right now. So if you want to just check your microphones and make sure that you're muted, I'd appreciate that. So once I do that, you'll see I'm coming to this page. I think this may be the page that caused some confusion for folks because you're seeing other New York City schools here. There's a little drop down. Don't worry about that. Like I said, that is being phased out. Everyone is now using the New York City Department of Education sign-in option. So I'll just click on that. And it's just your DOE email address. So again, for you staff members, it's going to be at schools.nyc.gov, that email address. For your students, it's your at nycstudents.net. I think I did see the question in the chat earlier. What about DOE Central staff that are not connected to a specific school? Yes, you have access as well. You can just log in with your DOE email address. There's no problem there. All right, so once you log in there, you're going to see this. It'll load for you. Perfect. And this is the Citywide Digital Library on Sora. You'll see that there's a few things we're going to go through. There are 4 tabs at the bottom of the screen with which you can navigate through Sora. By default, you're coming to this Explore page. And the Explore page is really kind of where you're going to browse through the library, the same way that at least me, when I walk in a library, I just walk through the stacks for a while. I walk through the shelves and see, you know, what I'm interested in, what I'm drawn to. It's the same sort of idea. Students can scroll through these collections and you'll see it changes, if not every couple of weeks, certainly every month. So right now we've got Mental Health Awareness Month at the very top. As I mentioned earlier, Jewish American Heritage Month, Asian American Pacific Islanders Month, Heritage Month. You've got those collections. And then lots of other collections. So Japanese culture and manga, cultural connections. These are some Chinese language ebooks, diverse perspectives. Go through these and check out these collections, check out these lists, okay? I'm going to scroll back up to the top and show you I could continue to scroll through, and there's tons of lists. Your students will likely scroll through those. Or I can come into this collections option at the top here, and I can see all of these lists listed alphabetically, right? And so you can just scroll through here and see what's interesting to you. Chinese language ebooks is maybe something that I'm looking for. If I scroll down, maybe I know that I'm looking for Spanish language, right? And this is Spanish language own voices, which if you're not familiar with the own voices hashtag, means that those are books written by the people that their characters and stories represent, right? So if it's a Spanish language, that those authors are native Spanish speakers, or that is their background. We've got a Ukrainian language and culture collection that I definitely want to point out based on the war that's going on in Ukraine right now, but also a Russian language collection too. And, you know, if you're not familiar, many Ukrainians speak Russian, many Ukrainian authors publish in Russian, but you probably also have lots of, you know, students with Russian backgrounds and just exposing to that culture as well. You've got all sorts of stuff here that you can go through. I would encourage you to check these out. If I go into one of them, I'm going to go into the diverse perspectives list right now. And so you'll see it's going to sort of summarize the list for me, 125 ebooks. I can go through and look at these. But as I mentioned, once you find a list you're interested in, all you have to do is copy this URL at the top of the page. So I'll highlight, copy, and now I can paste this link and I can send it in an email blast to my parents. I can send it in an email blast to my staff or to my teachers. I can send it to my students directly so that you can get them on the exact list that you want to get everyone on. Again, I'm listed as a staff member. You're all staff members. So when you log into these collections, you'll see everything pre-K through 12, even this list. But you can see some of these may be for middle school students, some may be for high school students, some may be for elementary. It will filter based on the grade level of that student, okay? Now, if I keep scrolling through here, you'll see the ebooks. You'll also see some of these audiobooks as well, designated by this little headphone icon, okay? So I'm gonna show you what that looks like, but first I'm just gonna borrow a book. So if I see Fast Pitch by Nick Stone, I see that it's available, I can click borrow here, or I can click on the jacket cover and it will take me to the title details page where I'll see some information about the book. I can essentially read the blurb or the back of the book. I can see some information on reading levels if that's something that's important to me as a student, if I want to make sure that it's within my reading level range. And I'll also see copies. So this is one thing I want to address. There are copy limits, right? It is still a library. These books are still purchased. Publishers and authors still need to be paid for their books. So not every book will be available indefinitely or without any limit on how many students can read it at a time. So just depending on the book, you'll see this book has 5 total copies, 3 are available. If all of them were checked out, instead of the borrow option, you'd see the option to place a hold, okay? The holds are filled pretty much within a week or right thereabouts. So students don't wait long. And I know Melissa and Library Services, they purchase the hold. So if you do place a hold, they'll go in there and see what they need more copies of and purchase more copies for the most part. Otherwise, I'm just going to click borrow and you'll see what this interface looks like. I do see a good question in the chat too about grade level. And I think you're asking about when I say that it's filtering by grade level, what if students are reading way above grade level? When I say that it's filtering based on grade level, what I mean is that if we know that a student is in 4th or 5th grade, it's not going to stop them from reading books that are at the 6th, 7th, 8th grade reading level, right? It is going to stop them from reading books that have been deemed inappropriate, right? That start to get into content areas that are too mature for them to be reading. So it's not necessarily, oh, we can't read above our grade level. It's that you can't read into content areas that are inappropriate, right? And Michael designates there what those breakdowns are. So students can always read below, can always read down. And again, it's more focused on the appropriateness of the content rather than the reading level or how difficult the text is. Great question. Thank you for asking. A book that might be a good example too that folks can relate to is like The Great Gatsby. I'd have to double check. I think The Great Gatsby reading level is really only like 5th or 6th grade. It's not a very difficult text, but there are more adult themes and it's more mature. So you wouldn't want that to be available to a 5th or 6th grader, right?
Regis,
Yes, Melissa.
can you just show how to do a grade level search?
Yeah, totally. So let's get back to this book while we're talking about grade levels. So I'm going to go back to my Explore page, and there's a couple of ways to do that, but I can search for a book here, and I could just type in my title or my author, but I'm going to come to more options. And that essentially gives me an advanced search where I could look for any specific subject, right? Maybe I just want fantasy, okay? But now I can also look at the difficulty. So I could do the text difficulty and say, hey, I'm reading at about a 6th grade or a 7th grade reading level, right? Or you could use Lexile scores if that's something your building uses and your students are familiar with, or ATOS levels, which are the AR reading levels. Well, again, whatever your building uses, you can work within that. But right now, I'm just going to leave it to text difficulty. So I may be in 4th or 5th grade, but know that I'm reading at a 6th or 7th grade reading level, and I'm going to search for fantasy books within that range. And now I get all sorts of results, right? So now I know that these are books within my reading level range that are fantasy books, something I'm probably going to be interested in. I'll get my first few rows and then I can see more to see more options. So this is a great way. And again, you can filter this down much further than that. I could specifically look for ebook versus audiobook. I could look at different subjects. I'll come back to this in a minute when I show you how to look for read-alongs specifically. But this is a great way to narrow down based on your reading level. Now, this is a good thing to show you because I closed the book that I had borrowed, but it's still available right here in the center of my screen at the bottom. So I'm just going to click on that and it pops right back up. I'm right back into the book I wanted to read. So when I check an ebook out, it automatically opens here. I can click on the center of the screen to either raise up or reduce that menu. I'm just going to scroll forward. I'm using my arrow keys right now, but I can also click on the right-hand side of the screen, or if I'm on a touch screen like a tablet or a phone, I can swipe with my finger, right? So it's very intuitive. Students will figure this out quickly. I'm going to jump right to chapter 1. These are hyperlinked, so I could go right wherever I need to. And now I'm within the text. So I'm going to show you just a few things that are really important when you're reading within an ebook to share with your parents, share with your students, make sure the teachers at the building are aware, all that stuff. And it's really these icons at the top here. Okay, so the first one is self-explanatory. It's going to go from 1 page of text to 2. Okay, and now you'll see that better if I go to the next page. I personally like reading with 2 pages of text, but if you're working on a tablet or a phone, or if you're working with a student who's maybe a struggling reader, 1 page of text may be easier to just fill the screen and focus on that text. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 2 pages. But this next icon, this block letter A, is where you'll have the appearance settings. And this is so crucial for our students, right? This is where you can increase the size of the text. Okay, you can change the backlighting. So you'll see this bright backlighting is the default, but I've selected the sepia tone. You could also use a dark or a high contrast mode. I'm going to stick with sepia right now. And then maybe most importantly, you can change the font. So, this is very different from print books. Print books are excellent, but one thing you can do in ebook is that you can change the font. You can find something that's more comfortable for you to read. Okay, and you have these different options, or this last one is you can use the Open Dyslexic font. If you're not familiar, this is a font that was developed specifically with students with dyslexia in mind. So it's going to weight the letters toward the bottom, make sure that each letter has a unique shape so that you have an easier time placing individual letters. And it's going to space all the letters out a little bit so that there's more room in between each letter. So this is a really good option for students, again, that have dyslexia or are just struggling readers. This is a different option for them to explore that they may be more comfortable with. So I'm going to go back into this block letter A to show you that again. And I'm going to go back to my default font because that's easier for me. One thing I want to note here, though, is that these are all sticky settings, which means that once I set it one time, every book that I open thereafter will have my settings already applied. So I won't need to increase the text. I won't need to change the backlighting again. It will have that for every book that I open after I set these. So it's a good thing to get out of the way. All right. I'll get to a couple of these other icons in just a minute, but I want to show you now. If I'm scrolling through, I can keep reading the book. And I'm going to show you a couple other tools. The first one, if I look for a word that maybe I'm not as familiar with, maybe something like soaring, I'm going to just click and hold on that word, and you'll see that it highlights. And when I release it, it gives me the option to define. So now I've got definitions within the text. I can quickly see the definitions, any synonyms, that sort of thing. And if I scroll to the bottom, I have an option to see Google Translate. And that's great if I'm an ELL student or if I'm reading a book that has foreign language words. This is a really good option for me. Okay, so it's very easy. You just click and hold on a word and it will highlight. I can do the same thing though, if I can click and hold on a word and then scroll over a whole piece of text. I can highlight that text, right? And now I'm taking notes. I'm annotating within the text. I can highlight in different colors. I'm going to use green. I can say super awkward. And that's the sort of note that I would probably take as a student, right? We teach our students as they start to learn how to read more closely, how to just call out things that are catching their attention, highlighting passages, asking questions, making comments, and then they'll go back into those comments, go back into those notes that they're taking and flesh them out a little bit. Maybe they use them to write a paper. Maybe they use them to draw out cause and effect. There are tons of applications for this, but it's a great tool to use with your students. I know Melissa and Michael give me flack sometimes because, hand up, I am the type of person that really likes to write in books. I like to draw on them. I circle things. I write in the margins, and that's admittedly not a good thing to do with library books, and specifically with school library books. So using an ebook gives you the ability to interact directly with that book. I'm going to save that. I do want to pause for a moment. I'm seeing some questions coming in the chat about the difference between student accounts, parents' accounts. Your account in Sora is exactly like your students' accounts, right? So you're going to be able to do everything that they can do. There is not really a staff version of Sora. It is the reading application. It's where you will read the books. If you wanted to do some of the admin tools, you can reach out to library services or you can reach out to myself and we can walk you through what that looks like. But there really isn't much reason to do that right now unless you're building your own school collection, right? So everything else you can pretty much do within Sora, but you have the ability to go in and see exactly the same thing that students see. It's really just the reading application. If you have a school librarian, they are the expert on Sora. And if you have questions, they're usually the first person that you should go to. And if you don't have a school librarian, we've got library resources, contact information at the end of the presentation. Reach out to them. They can definitely help you as well. All right, so I'm going to keep going now. A couple of other things to just point out. I've taken a note now. This last tab is where I'll find those notes. So if I scroll ahead, I can always jump back to my last note. So if I have notes all throughout the book, that makes it very easy for me to do. One thing that I want to point out here is that these notes are saved. So even if the book is returned, because these are library books, so you have a lending period of 14 days if you don't renew the book. So even if the book is returned to the library, I still have access to my notes and highlights. And if I check this book out again after I've already used it, I check the book out and all my notes and highlights are already in the book. It's as if I checked out the exact same copy and I can see my notes and highlights already there. So very easy. And then this last one that we didn't talk about now is just a search tool. So if I want to search for like a specific character in the book, I can do that. I can search for images, themes, symbols. I can search for specific passages. The example I give a lot of times, I already used Great Gatsby as an example, but I was an English major in college. So between high school and college, I had to read The Great Gatsby like a billion times. And I always had to, write about the significance of the green light in The Great Gatsby. And the green light actually only is mentioned like 3 or 4 times in that book. So I can't tell you how many times I'm flipping through that paperback. Like, I know it's here. I think it's in this chapter. Where is it? Where is it? Well, this search tool is a great way to just jump right to that phrase. And now that time that I was going to spend searching for it, I can spend actually rereading the passages and looking at the context around it. So a really good tool to use for students. All right, I'm going to close this book. And quickly, I just want to borrow an audiobook. I can borrow How to Ride a Dragon Storm. That's fine. It's part of the How to Train Your Dragon series. Fun book here. And I just want to make sure as I do this that I'm sharing my sound, which I wasn't. So now I am. So I'm going to scroll ahead a little bit so that we're out of, the beginning and the introduction and actually I can do that by clicking right here, the table of contents, and I can scroll ahead to like chapter 6 is fine. So now I'm going to press play, but before I do, you'll see that my narration speed is already at 0.8. And just like the reading settings within an ebook, I can change this speed and it's sticky. So because I reduced it to 0.8 before, that's where it left off for me. So I'm going to go back to normal so that you can see what this looks like from the very beginning. But this is the normal narration here.
Six. The axe of doom decides. Hiccup's mind raced desperately. He couldn't move, but inspiration...
Beautiful. So as you can see, you're going to be introduced with some music. You've got some contextual sounds. We've got a narrator that has a little bit of an accent that fits the mood of the story. Audiobooks are fantastic, and they're being produced at a really high level of quality right now. So for reluctant or struggling readers, or for stories that are maybe a little bit harder to get into, especially if you're at a high school, I think back to reading Shakespeare. Shakespeare is really tough to read. It's much better to listen to, in my opinion, because it's meant to be performed. It's meant to be acted out. Many of the Shakespeare audiobooks actually have an entire cast of characters and different narrators for different parts. So it's actually a much easier way to digest that information. I see that Laura mentions narration gets student engaged. It does. And there is a study that was done that compared brain activity levels when people are listening to audiobooks compared to when they're watching the same thing as a movie or television show. So they used as an example like Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, when you're watching the show, people actually had lower levels of engagement as when they were listening to the audiobook. So think about that for a second. I mean, I don't know about you, but that is a pretty good show. I really liked it. But the audiobook actually engages your brain much more. So students are more likely to be engaged when they're listening. And it makes great active listeners. Who doesn't want students that listen better, whether it's in the classroom or at home? So if you wanted to change the narration speed here, you could come in here, you could increase it. Me personally, when I listen to audiobooks, I do increase the speed. Otherwise, I tend to get a little distracted. I tend to daydream. So I go to about 1.25 or 1.5. But more likely, if your student is struggling reader, you can decrease the speed. So let's just listen to 0.9.
Me struck. Can you read the ticking thing, Norbert? Screamed Hiccup.
So again, that may slow things down. It sounds like this particular narrator reads a little quickly. You'll see that for different audiobooks, they read at different speeds. So you'll just find what works best for you, as students will. Okay. The same way that we took notes in ebooks too, I can take a note here. So I want you to watch. I'm going to press play, or maybe I'll go back 15 seconds because I listened to it and I thought, that's actually pretty interesting. So I'll go back 15 seconds. And once I press play, I'm going to tap on this little bookmark icon and I'm going to hold it. Okay. So watch what happens when I do that.
Hiccup's mind raced desperately. He couldn't move, but inspiration suddenly struck.
So you'll see now that I released it, this little yellow bar is a highlight. So the same way that I would highlight a passage in an ebook, I can highlight a passage in an audiobook, and at any time I can come back and revisit this. So it's a great way. If I want to come in here now and click on that, I can make a note. So if your students are more comfortable using audiobooks, or maybe they need an audiobook for an IEP or just additional support, they can still take notes. They can still reference these things. They can still use all the same tools that they would use with an ebook. It's a fantastic tool. So I'm going to close that out. All right. And quickly, I'm just going to show you how to search for a read along. So we did ebook, we did audiobook. Now, if I go to more options, we were here before to look for grade level stuff. I'm just going to scroll all the way to the bottom and I can check this read along book. So especially for those of you that work at buildings, elementary buildings, work with young students, this is a fantastic tool. And if I search, you'll see I get all sorts of stuff to begin with. Again, the first few rows, and then I can see more. And how about Goodnight Moon? What a classic. I love Goodnight Moon. So I'm just going to borrow this book now. Okay. Same thing, I'm going to click on the center screen to reduce the menu at the bottom. I can scroll ahead if I don't want to do some of the intro, but then I'll click the center screen and press play, and you can watch what happens.
In the great green room, there was a telephone and a red balloon and a picture of the cow jumping over the moon. And there were 3 little bears sitting on chairs.
And at any time I can pause it. If I don't want to use the narration, I could read it just like an ebook. I can just scroll through here. You can see that I'm still at 0.9 speed because that's the narration speed that I had set in that audiobook just a moment ago. But a fantastic tool. I mean, again, the importance of having a book read out loud to you cannot be minimized. So I just wanted to highlight that very quickly. And then I'm going to talk to you really quickly about how to add the public libraries. We mentioned it a few times in the presentation, and now I'm going to show that to you. So all you'll do here, I'm in the Explore page. I come onto the right-hand side of the screen here, and you'll see the ability to add a library. I've already added a handful. I've added Brooklyn Public, New York Public, and Queens Public. Those are your 3 New York City libraries. If you live in New York City or you work in New York City, you have access to all 3 of those libraries. Even if you live in New Jersey or outside of New York City, if you work there, you have access to all 3 of these libraries. So if you need to use the link that we mentioned before to get the library cards, that's great. But if I needed to add this from scratch, I would just add library. I'm going to look for Queens Public and say, this is my library. And now I'm in their collection. You'll see that it's showing me juvenile and young adult books. That's because I'm coming through as a staff user. If I was an elementary school user, it would just show me juvenile books. And then once I go to check out my first book the first time, it's going to ask me to sign in. This is just going to happen the first time. So I can either use the Queens Library and use my library card number and PIN, or if I'm using NYPL or Brooklyn Public Library or a New Jersey library, whatever, you would do it this way with a library card. Or I can go to the New York City Department of Education, sign in with my DOE email address and password, the same way that I did to log into Sora, okay? If I'm on a personal device or a school issued device, I don't need to log out. I'll remain logged in for about 360 days. So basically an entire year. So you only need to get students logged in that first time on whatever device they're using. If you're on a shared device, you will want to sign out. So keep that in mind. But once I've connected my public library, you can see at the top, I'm now browsing through the Queens collection. I can change this back to the DOE. and now I'm back in the citywide digital library. Or if I search for a book, if I do a book like Wonder, you'll see that in my search results, I get the DOE first, but if I scroll down, I get Brooklyn Public, I get New York Public, I get Queens Public. So if for whatever reason the book is not in the CDL, or there aren't enough copies, you can rely on those public libraries as well. And again, this is great for summer reading. This is great for the summer period, because no matter where your students go, they're gonna have access to, I can't stress this enough, tens of thousands of books at any given time, any place. Really, really important to remember that. So there are other things within Sora that you can browse through. The home tab is where your notes and highlights are saved. Any words that you defined are saved, or it will recommend some books for you based on what you've been reading. The
Regis,
shelf,
I'd like to emphasize one more thing.
please.
You know, when we talk about summer reading and getting kids involved in reading and engaged in this during the summer, you know, for me, as soon as and I have 2 teenage daughters, as soon as I tell them to do something and that they have to do it, they run the other way. And I'm sure some of us have that experience. So you have to work on getting them engaged in this. What interests them? And so it's not just reading those assignments. Sora is a great tool for that, but it also is for pleasure reading. And so there are a lot of comics in here. There's a lot of manga, there's graphic novels, there are tons of cookbooks. There are books about different sports. There are books about art. There are drawing books. There's just every type of item that you could possibly think of. And so it's not just the assignment, it goes far beyond that. And that's how we engage our kids. It's giving them what interests them, and it's different for every single kid. And so when you want to foster that love of reading, foster what interests them and foster the independent reader, the independent learner. We also have tons of magazines available in here. And the magazines are unlimited. They're simultaneous use. So everyone could take out the same magazine and we will have enough for all. And so that's a great way to engage your parents, engage your teachers, engage your kids. You know, there's also things on movies that are, you know, the latest movies that are hitting the theaters. If they're based on a book, I have the book available. I make sure that we have enough copies. Bad Guys just hitting the theater now, and that's based on a children's book. There are tons of copies of Bad Guys in different versions and different books in the series. So as soon as those books are hitting the street, I'm buying them so that we can make sure that our kids are engaged and enjoying this, and it's not just something that they have to do, but it's something they want to do.
Well said, Melissa. I mean,
That's
reading
my
is fun.
soapbox of the day.
Reading is fun. We want to make sure students love to read because they love to read. That's excellent. The shelf is here. You can see that my books are downloaded. And the last thing I'll show you is this Me tab, where students can keep track of how much they've been reading. This is just today, but you can change the date range and see how many books they've opened, the total time reading, streaks. This is great for keeping track of independent reading or reading over the summer, whatever else. And then they'll earn different achievements for doing different things. And you know, you didn't see me get it because I've used this before, but maybe if you logged in for the first time today, you got the blast off badge or whatever else. This is a great way to motivate students. So I've gone long, so I'm sorry. In the interest of time, I'm going to stop sharing. But if there are any questions, please, you know, let us know if we do have a couple of minutes. Otherwise, Laura, I'll send you the slides and make sure you're able to get those out.
This was fabulous. Oh my goodness. Can I just say, first of all, thank you so much, Regis, but also to Melissa and to Michael. I want to say, I mean, there were questions, but the team was in the chat. And so I feel like a lot of folks are feeling very supported. I hope that you see this is actually a very easy thing to do. It's not complicated. I mean, it's almost like they're like, you got an iPad, you got a phone, you got a this, we'll make it work, right? So like, that's the name of the game. Like our kids have access to this. And as we shared at the beginning of our meeting, because students should be keeping their centrally managed device, hopefully they got this access well throughout the summer so that they can foster that love of reading. That's what this is about. So in just a moment, Latikwa is going to drop a link in the chat because I know that that is the question that is on everyone's mind next, right? I need attendance. So as promised, Latikwa has dropped the attendance It is, the name of today's session is Library Services Faith Friday.
I am
So just
jumping
make sure
off.
you fill
Thank
that
you
out.
so much.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We really appreciate it.
Bye all.
Bye. And I know we're at the tail end, but if some folks have some questions while you're filling out the attendance, I think we have Michael and Regis for a few more minutes.
Hi, my question is the tutorial, which is on the home page, is that going to be sufficient for families to go through and because I don't feel, you know, I do a lot, but I don't feel like I can present what you just presented.
Totally, great question. If you go to that homepage, that Discover Sora page, there are a few different very short tutorials. So there's like a 1.5 minute how to get logged on. There's like a 1.5 minute how to use your first ebook. There's like a 1.5 minute how to connect to the public libraries. So absolutely. And you can actually, if you click on those videos, you can share the link specifically to those videos. So don't feel like you have to replicate what we just did.
I just have a quick feedback for the team. As I was looking at this, and I'm just thinking about me as a kid, and during book fair when everyone was ready to purchase a book, and unfortunately, I didn't have the money to purchase a book, and I felt left out. This is such a game changer for our families. That it really is bridging the equity gap when it comes to access. So as my younger self, I'm just feeling like, wow, I wish I had this opportunity. So I would love for you guys to think about how can you promote this in your school so that every kid, it's true, everyone has a passion of reading. It's just that how do we, I love how Melissa framed it in a way where it doesn't feel forced, but it's also a love and a passion. And I think that you guys are such this is an amazing team because we can promote it in a way where we can show that there's access to these books. There's access to books and magazines, and for our younger kids who are in the early childhood, there's ways that the parents can even put it on and do read aloud. So this is such an amazing tool, and we can't thank. I on behalf of family facing liaisons, I thank you so much for creating this space, and thank you, Melissa, for saying when the movies are out, I'm purchasing the books, because that's pretty awesome.
Will say Melissa and her team do a fabulous job. I personally, work with both Michael and Melissa, and I can tell you there's a lot of passion there, right? This isn't, obviously books are academic, but I will tell you libraries are slightly different than classroom libraries. And Melissa will absolutely speak to the difference between that. Teachers in the classroom are using books for instruction as they should, helping students, progress in their reading. Libraries, school libraries are structured differently. It's not about I'm teaching you to read. It's that kids are coming to you with interests and passions and they want to pursue them. And oftentimes when you have an interest, you can actually read at a higher reading level, right? Because you actually have more context and background knowledge. When I taught, I had kids who were like, I love trains, I love tigers. And they were checking out books. I'm like, what else? It's a little harder. But because they're motivated, they read that book. So, I understand the hesitation. I see it too. I get it. I used to field the question from parents. I'm like, look, any, book in a child's hand is typically a good thing, right? The only caveat is like, if it's not developmentally appropriate, but if they're reading, it doesn't matter if they're reading manga. It doesn't matter if they're reading a cookbook, if they're reading a magazine, they just gotta read. And we gotta foster learning. When we put all these stipulations on it, guess what? They don't want to read. That's bottom line. That's my soapbox. All right. Sorry, guys. All the educators are on their soapboxes today. That folks, we're basically at the tail end. I can't believe so many folks are still on. We're definitely a little over, but I think it just speaks to the fact that this was amazing. Again, I can't say thank you enough to our library services folks and Regis from Sora. We really, really appreciate it. This was fabulous. We will get the recording to folks. We'll put all the information you need into our PC team along with this presentation, because I know some folks have been asking. Don't worry, we will share everything. And with that, remember, folks, we got one more Coffee Tea Tech Talk and one more Face Friday. So with that, hope you have a fabulous weekend, a fabulous rest of your Friday, and we will see you in a few.
Bye, guys. Remember that you can also use the marketing materials and personalize it to your school. Just forgot to add that. So we don't have to do anything. We can market. We have all the marketing materials in all different languages. So have fun. I hope you guys, I mean, I know I enjoyed it myself. Laura, always wonderful, Laura, hosting us. Bye, everybody.
Can I ask a question, Jerry? Do we have a sign-in sheet?
Yeah, let's see
I
what,
just
Okay, thank
reposted
you.
it in the chat. I'll wait just a few moments, but folks, please click on that.
Can you give me one moment just for one more thing, Laura? But
Absolutely.
Just doorknob. If you need help building your library collection, or you need help with Sora, I'm putting in an About Us link for our office. We're here to help. If you want to reach out to us, we're here to support you. So please don't hesitate. We want to help you get your libraries and your library programs off the ground, help you with Sora, and think about using this now so that kids are getting in the habit going into summer, not getting the sheet that goes in the backpack that gets ripped up the last week of school. So think about summer reading now and building those reading habits. And if kids are using it for classes, if they're using it for these kind of going to the end of the year assignments, they'll be ready for summer reading and know what's available to them. So thank you all for having us. We are glad to be here, and we're glad to help you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, folks. So I posted the link. I'm going to post it one more time. I'm going to give folks about 30 more seconds, and then we are ending this meeting because I do have an 11:30. I'm already late to. The story of our lives, right? Like, who isn't late to their 11:30 right now?
Right. What was this workshop, please?
Library services.
Thank you.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye, David.
Bye. Take care.
Bye,
Have a good
guys.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, my friends.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a great weekend, and thanks for a great session.
Yes. Happy
Thank you.
Friday.
Thank
Happy
you.
Friday.
Bye.